Trans games matter, my friends. You don't know what it is like to be a first-person shooter when you identify as an RPG. And I can relate, you know. I am also trans. I am trans economy. I'm a billionaire, trapped in the body of a broke-ass SOB. I am also trans handsome.
One ugly motherfucker.
Yes, but I identify as a spot-on Ryan Reynolds lookalike.
Enticing, right?
Speaking of whom, I recently partnered up with him.
I'm sorry, what?
He doesn't know it yet, I think, but yes, I have a partner now because everyone needs to make ends meet, right? Even my cat started an Only Cats account to earn his keep here at the house. But unlike my cat, I am lucky that I don't have to commit to things that I do not believe in. Quite the contrary, in fact. Telling you about what to do about your shitty and overpriced wireless service is something that I am quite excited about. So, if your wireless bill is
Too damn high.
allow me to elaborate a bit on Mint Mobile, who I am partnering with for today's video. So if you live in the US, Ryan and I have a double-decker of good news for you, but I'll let him do the talking for a bit.
At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. They put their names on arenas, we put ours on my lower back. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. And if this were one of their ads, they'd end it here with a happy customer. So we'll end ours with an angry goat. Look at the angry goat.
So the first news is that Mint Mobile are built on the nation's largest 5G network. Their plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text and super fast 5G and free mobile hotspot. And the second good news is that for a limited time only, starting on June 12, all plans, I repeat, all plans will be only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. That means you'll be getting 50% off the unlimited plan. The moral of the story, my friends, is this. If you're interested in reliable coverage and fast data for a fraction of the cost, go to mintmobile.com/yold. You'll find the link in the description section down below. And I am not flexing my YouTube muscles here, but listen, these guys have not been the first to reach out to me, but they are the first ones who've actually rubbed me the right way, and the first ones who, I think, offer something that you guys can get a huge benefit from. So go to our partner mintmobile.com/yold to get premium wireless for as low as $15 a month. Make the switch today and start saving money without sacrificing quality. I'm actually serious, guys. Always prefer companies that cut out the middleman. I know that's what these guys at Mint Mobile do, and that's why their prices are much lower than the rest of the carriers, as I understand it. I would hate to think that you are missing out on Mao Kenshi, or Stray, or Monster Train, or some of the other games that look a little bit pricey on paper because you are paying a fortune for overpriced wireless service. As for this video, I think it's very important, because transgender people get the lion's share of the attention these days, but no one speaks of transgenre games, and I've just had it with this, because trans games matter. And on this video, we are going to be talking about games that would have been much better, and they would have been much happier with themselves if they had been a different genre. And as it's always the case with these videos,
We have rules, you know?
so let's get to them. First, no stacking. This time, this rule is going to work a little bit differently. The way I see it, there are developers who consistently put out games that are transgenre, because that's their style of game, or maybe because they don't know how to do anything else. In those cases, we are going to choose the worst case of the lot.
That's offensive.
Okay, the most representative then. There's also no stacking of games that are based on the same IP if that's the case, so only one Batman game basically. Second, we are not including games here that have been mislabeled on Steam or that suck at the one thing they were supposed to be good at. That deserves its own list, I think. Third, I understand that the one big reason why most of the games on this list couldn't have been the game I'm suggesting is lack of money. This video just represents what I would have wanted these games to be. It has nothing to do with the viability of the concept. Plus, it's a good enough idea to buy time for that Fallout 2 video, wouldn't you agree? Fourth, This is a personal list, as personal as it has ever gotten really. That means that you don't have to agree with it. But if you think there are other games that fit this bill, I'd be very curious to read about them in the comment section down below. So let's kick this one off with a few honorable mentions. Dirge of Cerberus, an RPG trapped in the body of a shooter. Bad Dudes, a side-scrolling fighting game that should have been a 3D brawler. Everspace 2, what could have been a fantastic immersive space exploration game is but a mediocre RPG with okay combat and secondary mechanics. Rebel Galaxy, a space sci-fi open-world RPG that would have been awesome as a sandbox RPG in the spirit of Star Traders Frontier. So here are our top 10 transgenre games. 10. Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. This game is already pretty fucking amazing as it is. It still is my favorite From Software game. I guess it's because it's the one that comes closer to pressing all my right keys. The combat system is still the best real-time combat system I've ever experienced in a game. The story is straightforward and simple, but poignant and filled with stakes, and not some vaguely explained collection of lore that you must round up with your own interpretations to make some sense out of it. But on the other hand, many of the action RPG elements that were present in other From Software games are missing here, and I think that's a pity. True, you have techniques, prosthetics, and even a slew of consumables that help you tailor Sekiro to your own playstyle. Actually, I don't think I would have been able to deal with these guys, let alone this guy, if I hadn't had this very specific version of the umbrella prosthetic. But I wanted more tailoring. I wanted different swords, perhaps even different weapons. How cool would it have been if Sekiro had had different armor sets, huh? How about being able to enhance your grapple by increasing its reach to, I don't know, maybe access locations that would have been otherwise impossible to reach? Sekiro already has the bones of an RPG. There are 4 endings that I know of before the actually crowd corrects me. There are several different prosthetics with various different upgrades, there are several moments in which you may choose to eavesdrop, and many of these act like soft decision nodes story-wise in some capacity. And you can move about the game's locations more or less however you wish. You are an RPG bro, trapped in the body of an action game. 9. The Outer Worlds. When I browsed the credits for The Outer Worlds, I just couldn't believe my eyes. Tim Kaine and Leonard Boyarsky? You mean to tell me that the mastermind who raised the Fallout IP from the ground up, and the artist responsible for making it live rent-free in our heads, are also the ones to blame for this soulless, hand-holdy, and utterly forgettable title? See, these guys were the creators of The Outer Worlds, and some of the people credited as narrative designers also worked in the first 2 Mass Effect games. And The Outer Worlds does try to blend together the Fallout and Mass Effect experiences, and it failed. Most people, and by that I mean people who actually know what they are talking about, have labeled this game as just mediocre. And perhaps it is just mediocre and not terrible. I admit I have a very biased and very negative opinion about this game, because I think it is completely drenched in the post-2016 disease that has been contaminating stories and lore in entertainment, and that also fails to deliver on everything that I expect from an RPG title. But this game is far from being a complete turd. Actually, there is stuff that it does very competently. Enemy variety is solid, and it keeps combat entertaining for the most part. Level design and graphics are truly unique. The art direction in this game is spotless, actually. The Outer Worlds universe has a very strong visual personality. Its colors are vibrant, and its landscapes are varied and fun. Sound effects and mix, especially the sound of guns, were incredible. While not up to par with the best FPS games out there, the sound department in The Outer Worlds is way above your average first-person RPG. On the gameplay end of things, the shooting feels right, your companion special moves pack a punch, the running and gunning experience is not too shabby either. Even the jumping around feels more sprightly than it does in most first-person RPGs. So, it's just the RPG elements that suck really, although they do suck a lot. I personally could have done without the idiotic fetch quests, the hand-holdy gameplay, the utterly predictable missions, the cheesy companions and their cringe side missions, or the overall lack of verisimilitude of the main story. And I would have appreciated if The Outer Worlds had had a bit, or rather a lot more of the freedom and the opportunity cost that we had in Fallout. The bottom line is that if The Outer Worlds had leaned more on its FPS mechanics in favor of its half-assed RPG elements, this would have been a game that we would still be talking about today. Don't get me wrong, as a shooter, this is nowhere near the experience you get in Doom Eternal, for example, but I still think The Outer Worlds would have worked a lot better as an FPS with RPG elements than the other way around. 8. Vampire the Masquerade, Coteries of New York. This is a choose-your-own-adventure game that builds upon the Vampire the Masquerade lore and is part of the World of Darkness series. And there are a couple of decent things worth mentioning about this game. It is competently written and it nails the vibe of the IP and the series. But this game is screaming to come out of its visual novel closet and declare that it identifies as an RPG. I can't help but feel that developers wanted to give the player more freedom than they actually did, and that they wanted to make the story in this game less linear than it actually turned out to be. And while the story in Coteries of New York managed to keep me invested almost all the way through, there was this lingering feeling that the game didn't give more because of its format. This is also true of Shadows of New York, but you know, no stacking and all. Coteries of New York is an RPG or a point-and-click adventure game that would have also worked, trapped in the restraining jacket of a choose-your-own-adventure visual novel. Inscryption. If you consider yourself a gamer, this is a game you should play. It's absolutely on my list of games you have to play before you die. Its narrative design is masterful in many more ways that I can mention here without spoiling it. It features groundbreaking narration in the form of parallel universes in which the narrator is unknowingly unreliable. It reminds me of Twin Peaks and Mulholland Drive's neo-noir surrealism in the best possible way. But none of those are things that I want in my card games, guys. As a card game, Inscryption is mediocre at best. It's missing many key features of the genre, it's way too easy, and there are just too many ways to chase the combat in this game. This game strongly reminds me of The Seventh Guest and even the original Myst from the 90s, both of which were puzzle games in which your goal was to solve the mystery. And it would have been the perfect fit for Inscryption, especially because there already is a great deal of puzzle solving in this game. Sure, the story revolves around a deck of cards, and turning the game into a puzzle game would have required some tweaking on the story end of things, but I don't think that would have been that big of a challenge for a game designer as talented as this Daniel Mullins guy. This is a fantastic puzzle solving game trapped in the body of a mediocre card game, and that is just unfortunate. 6. Leisure Suit Larry, Magna Cum Laude. This is easily one of the worst games I've ever played, and it's mostly because it's the wrong genre. Leisure Suit Larry Magna Cum Laude consists of a collection of skill-based minigames, and they all feel painfully crowbarred into a story-driven game that revolves around Larry's nephew. Listen, a Leisure Suit Larry spin-off centered around a nerdy nephew trying to get lucky with the ladies in a college frat house setting? That is the best idea for a spin-off since Fraser from Cheers. This concept basically sells itself, if you don't turn it into a half-ass mobile-like collection of minigames that nobody fucking asked for. If this had been a point-and-click adventure game or even a throwback to the text parsing games, it would have been a hit with the franchise's target audience. And unlike Vampire the Masquerade Coteries of New York, which would have required a complete rework, the bones for a point-and-click adventure game were already built into Leisure Suit Larry Magna Cum Laude. The locations, the animations, the characters, everything. If you are looking for modern-day renditions of this old-time favorite, check out Wet Dreams Don't Dry and Wet Dreams Dry Twice. Those are love letters to the original material. As for this one, do yourself a favor and give this trans-genre mess of a game as wide a berth as you possibly can. 5. Outer Wilds. Let's get this out of the way. This game is already phenomenal as it is. I think it's yet another of those must-play before you die titles. The sheer beauty of the game's soundtrack and the way in which it's used to push forward the game's message is pure genius. The game is captivating, depressing, and even terrifying when it wants to be. The ending packs an emotional punch, and the shifting nature of the galaxy in this game is awe-inspiring. But man, that world reset mechanic. Let's face it, this is the weak point in Outer Wilds. The developers simply couldn't turn the continuous shift in the galaxy into an endless loop, so they decided to include a hard reset after 22 minutes or so. And I don't blame them. One of the planet gets completely destroyed by meteors, and that planet alone must have been a titanic task to design and develop as it is. Imagine trying to pack that into a loop. You do have to give props to the writers though, they managed to turn this mechanic into the story's turnstone, and they even used it to make a very solid case for the game's message. Bravo, bravo indeed. But there is so much to see in this game, so much to experience. The feeling of anxiety of not being able to go to your ship because you took one step in the wrong direction, or simply because the planet shifted in a way that made it impossible for you to go back the way you came. Think of it, Outer Wilds is an exploration game, but if it had kept its bones, and if the devs had worked a way to turn the galaxy's apocalyptic shift into an endless loop, this would have been an awesome survival game with exploration elements. As it is, the hard reset mechanic works like a safety net that undermines the feeling of adventure and thrill that you get from getting lost or from losing sight of your ship. Imagine if you had no choice but to find a way back to your ship by looking for ways to climb or fly or teleport back to it. Imagine if you had to procure provisions to survive and materials with which to repair your ship. Imagine if your ship had camping implements. Imagine if you had to put extra thought into where to land to safeguard your ship, amongst other things. All that potential lost because Outer Wilds is a survival game trapped in the body of an exploration game. 4. Mafia Definitive Edition. The definitive edition of Mafia that came out in the year 2020 tells one of the best stories told in video games in recent memory. It features insanely good voice acting, amazing graphics, and killer sound. And it takes place in a huge city where there's nothing to do except the very specific things the game wants you to do. And these are things that you must do exactly the way the game tells you to. It even adds time limits to some missions so that you don't dare to find alternative ways to do things. The city of Lost Haven is huge, intricate, and completely wasted in this game. If this had been a third-person open-world action game like Grand Theft Auto or The Saboteur, I think people would still be talking about it. As it is, it's a good Mafia story in which you get to play linear action bits every now and then. 3. Batman: The Enemy Within. I'm not a fan of Telltale's brand of gameplay. QuickTime events rank high on the nope factor for me, and that's almost all there is to their games on the gameplay end of things. They do tend to tell solid stories though, even if they are contaminated with a post-2016 disease. But this developer probably wouldn't have gotten an entry on this list if they hadn't made a Batman game. The thing is that the Batman Arkham series is a thing, an awesome thing. It's not only a rare case of video games based on a comic book character that are actually good, but they are also a love letter to the stories and the characters in the source material. You don't get to be in the driver's seat of Batman's character in the Arkham series, but that's probably not what you pay the price of the admission for in those games anyways. But in Telltale's Batman: The Enemy Within, you do get to be in Batman's shoes. At times it even feels like a test of how much you know about Batman's character. And the game does an excellent job presenting you with critical decision nodes and branching story paths. Some choices are a game of smoke and mirrors, sure, but many others allow you to drastically steer the ship of the story one way or the other. But to me, this action just doesn't cut it. Not after you've experienced this action. I know this is not something Telltale does, but all throughout this game, in all chapters, I kept saying, damn, if only the gameplay in this game had been like the one we got in Rocksteady's Arkham series. It would have been the best game ever. If only they had combined the narrative design of Batman: The Enemy Within with the gameplay of the Arkham series. To me, Batman: The Enemy Within should have been an action RPG. 2. Fallout 3. There are just too many intellectual properties, bands, and even restaurants that I've walked away from in my life because at some point they decided that they were no longer interested in being for me. I could sit here forever telling you about movie sagas, TV shows, music bands, and of course video games that at some point decided to say, fuck it, we're going to take a step out of the niche and into the broader market to appeal to everyone. And it seems like taking this big step always entails cutting out the stuff that made these bands and IPs appealing to their core fanbase in the first place. Bands that shorten and simplify their instrumental interludes, or abandon their niche themes because the mainstream audience considers them to be cheesy. TV shows that stretch seasons beyond their natural lifespans, or IPs that get updated because they desperately seek to appeal to Twitterson and his friends. And while Fallout as a franchise is one of those very rare exceptions of IPs that at some point managed to rekindle my interest, albeit briefly, Fallout 3 has easily been one of the most abrupt departures from the original concept that I've seen in my life. And it was not just that the brand was taking to a different ballpark gameplay-wise. That all by itself wouldn't have bothered me. Actually, if Fallout 3 hadn't been a Fallout game, I would have even considered it a decent game. But the single most appealing thing about the first two games, the thing that made these two classics stand out in the crowd for decades to come, the thing they nailed in such a way that developers still struggle to imitate these days, is almost completely gone from Fallout 3. And that is, of course, the freedom of choice and consequence. I also can't express in words how much I loathe the way in which they retconned Harold, the one character that embodies the spirit of Fallout, a guy who's gone through the worst of tribulations but continues to expect good things to happen to everyone. Harold's unwavering cheerfulness and kind-hearted nature were the turnstones of the character in the original Fallout for a reason, that I will be elaborating further upon on the next video. And before you jump in and start explaining things, I concede that the writers in Fallout 3 put a lot of effort and creativity to flesh out Harold's story. And him wanting you to end his life is more than understandable given how events play out in Fallout 3. Well, at least the writers bothered making a case for Harold's change of attitude. So I understand why he went from being a cheerful character with unbending optimism to looking forward to euthanasia. It's not like he went from being an empathetic man who always sees the good in people to an embittered old asshole who has given up on humanity and spends his day drinking fluorescent green milk from an alien creature without any explanation. What I mean is, I understand Harold's situation in Fallout 3 and his motivations, but I just don't like that they decided to go that way with that character. To me, Harold embodies the spirit of Fallout, and turning him into this fear of the dark version of Eddie for whom life can't end soon enough, felt as though Bethesda were saying, yeah, this is our IP now, and we get to do whatever we want with it. And that's generally how I feel whenever I see a retcon character. Hello, Cullen, didn't see you there. But you know, just like there are bits of the old Harold coming through in this Fallout 3 version, there are solid bouts of role-playiness shining through from time to time in this game, like a desperate little RPG refusing to renounce its true self to give in to the FPS genre fully. This franchise was meant to be a purebred RPG, and it should have stayed a purebred RPG all the way through. Although, I haven't played Fallout Tactics, which you guys seem to like quite a lot. 1. King's Quest VIII. I am going to be brief about this one because this one hurts. This is the wrong game, telling the wrong story, with the wrong vibe, the wrong technology, and the wrong artistic design. It features the wrong protagonist in the wrong setting, behaving in the wrong way. The protagonist should have been a Graham family member. It should have taken place in Daventry or some other lore-consistent fairy tale fantasy setting. It should have been lighthearted and colorful. And more importantly, this should have been a point-and-click adventure game, just like every other King's Quest game since King's Quest V Absence Makes the Heart Go Yonder. This game was the last standalone game of the franchise, and it's not hard to see why. And that's it. That's all I have for you today. Can you think of any other trans-genre games that would have been much cooler if they had been something else? I'm most curious about this. But for now, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, thank you for watching all the way up until now. If you like what you are seeing on this channel, please consider subscribing and clicking that notification bell to avoid the usual YouTube shenanigans. Share the video, but most importantly, never stop gaming, but don't let gaming get in the way of your hopes and dreams. Bye everyone.